Regulation, which was previously ruled unconstitutional. Advocates gathered outside the appellate court on Rochester's East Avenue as the court heard the final arguments in an appeal to this ruling. Some background here: in July of last year, Republican State Senator George Borrello and other plaintiffs won a lawsuit against the governor, as well as the New York State Department of Health, over a regulation that would ultimately allow the Commissioner of Health to issue isolation or quarantine orders in order to control the spread of the disease. The judge struck that regulation down, saying it violated constitutional separation.
The first thing I'd like to do is get on the record what this regulation actually says, and then I'll go into some of the details on how it conflicts with our existing.
We certainly don't need to read the regulation to us.
No. I'm not going to read it. So, Rule 2.13 gave the Commissioner of Health the unbridled power to pick and choose which New Yorkers she could lock up. I'm saying she because at the time it was Dr. Mary Bassett. She could lock up or lock down. She didn't have to prove you were sick. She didn't have to prove you were exposed to a communicable disease. She didn't have to prove you were a health threat. She could issue an isolation or quarantine order at whim. It didn't have to be a state of emergency. That quarantine order or that isolation order would determine how long you were in lockup or lockdown. They could have locked you up in your home, or they could have removed you from your home with the force of police as clearly delineated in 2.13. With the force of police, they could have removed you from your home and put you into a detention center, a facility, whatever you'd like to call it, whatever noun you choose. It gets you to the same place. It's not your home, and you don't get to pick where you go. They could have locked you up there for however long they wanted. No restrictions. Days, weeks, months. There was no age restriction. So they could have done this to you, but they also could have done this to your child or your grandchild or your elderly parent. The provision said that they could tell you what you could and couldn't do while you were in lockup or lockdown. They could use the police in order to make sure you were abiding by their isolation or quarantine order. And if you disobeyed, you would be subject to either civil penalties, which could be up to $2,000 per day, and each day that you disobeyed their order was a new violation. So if you disobey their order for 10 days, that's $20,000 in fines.
Is there a cap?
I believe it was up to $2,000. Yes, Your Honor. And so there was the civil aspect, and then there was also the fact that they could use criminal penalties against you if you disobeyed one of their isolation or quarantine orders. And when we were at the trial court last year doing oral arguments, the trial court judge specifically asked, if you issue me an isolation or a quarantine order and I disobey, I don't want to go, can you get the police to come and arrest me and take me to a facility somewhere? And the Attorney General's response was a resounding, yes, we can. That's what the regulation says we can do. So